Nāvavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, saha vīryam karvāvahai, tejasvinavadītamastu mā vidvishāvahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we be protected, may we be nourished, may we do brave work, may our work be glorious. May there be no conflict among us. May there be peace, peace, peace. Welcome everyone. Can somebody just confirm if they can hear and see me well? Thank you. So, today we will be switching things up a little bit. We will first do the meditation and then we will go into discussion so that those who are short on time can quickly just attend the sit and they can drop off, and those who have time and want to learn more about the practice can stay and we can discuss about what we are doing and why we are doing. Okay, so before we begin, I will just speak a little bit about the practice that we are going to do. What we are going to do today, in the beginning, we will be doing ṣanmukhī mudrā, bhrāmarī, prāṇāyāma. We learnt about Pratyāhāra before 2 sessions. In last 2 sessions, we discussed bhakti, but before that, we discussed Pratyāhāra. So one of the Pratyāhāra is bhrāmarī Pratyāhāra. How it is done, you just have to see me and we will do it in next couple of minutes together. So for doing that, you have to take your hands, place one finger on top of your eye. The next finger, the middle finger, goes just beside the nostril. You don't have to close the nostril, just it rests beside the nostril. Third finger goes above the upper lip and fourth finger goes below the lower lip. Don't press your eyes with the index finger, just keep it gently touched, okay? And the thumb closes your ear. Okay, it's clear? First finger, index finger on top of eye, middle finger just beside the nostril, the third finger, ring finger on top of the first lip, upper lip, and little finger below the lower lip, and thumb closing ear, both the ears. Placing hand this way, we will inhale and then we will exhale making M sound. And we will do this for 5 times. Okay, so you won't be able to hear me, you won't be able to see me, anything, but during guided meditation, you would like to hear me. So what I will suggest you, after you do ṣanmukhī mudrā, after you do this chant, when you start meditation, put your earbuds in a place where you can pick it up after doing the bhrāmarī chant without opening your eyes, just like I did. Yeah? So keep your earbuds, or if you are wearing earplugs hanging through your neck, that is also fine. But just, I would not want you to open your eyes during the whole process, right? We will do 5 humming sounds in that ṣanmukhī mudrā, and then we will start our meditation. I mean, in the meditation itself, the first part will be Shanmukhī mudra, and rest I will guide you through. Okay, so are we ready? Any doubt on that? How to do Shanmukhī mudra? Okay, let's start our timer and we can do this together. Make yourself comfortable. You can close your eyes, remove your spectacles. Place your hand in Shanmukhī mudra, index finger on the eyes, middle finger just beside the nostril, mouth closed by ring and little finger, and ear closed by the thumb. Place your hands in your laps. Just sit. Try to keep your attention completely detached. If you see yourself absorbed in external sounds, detach your attention. If you find yourself observing sensations, detach your attention. If you find yourself observing your thoughts, detach your attention. If you find your attention attached with the movement of breath, detach your attention from that too. Maintain this non-abiding awareness. Maintain this non-abiding awareness. Do not replay past memories. Do not imagine the future. Do not judge the present moment. Do not analyze any thought. Detach your attention from anything it is being pulled towards, anything it is trying to associate with. Just sit. Make sure your attention is not attached to anything longer than you can notice. Maintain complete non-abiding awareness. Free your awareness from all associations. Just sit. With your eyes closed, fill your heart with the feeling of love and compassion. We all have experienced love. We all have experienced compassion. If you have experienced it in association with someone, try to imagine the face of that person. Try to imagine that situation and bring that feeling back in your heart. Experience that love. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinaḥ, sarve santu nirāmayāः, sarve bhadrani paṣyantu, mā kaśyid dukha bhāg bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the benefit of our practice, may the merits of our practice be shared by all. May all be healthy. May all be happy. May all see good. May nobody ever suffer. May there be peace, peace, and peace. Join your palm, rub them against each other. Cup your eyes with the warmth and slowly open your eyes. Take a moment to analyze how you are feeling. And when you are ready, if anyone wants to share any of their experiences or how they felt about this session, they can share on the chat, or they can raise their hand and speak up, join me on the stage, and then we will go into today's discussion. Okay. So, last 2 weeks we discussed about Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is the section or the path where rational and reasoning are not considered the supreme way of approaching divine. The prominent tool on the path of Bhakti Yoga is feeling, is emotion, is your personal connection with the divine. And because everything in this universe is divine, every single thing in this universe is divine, you can have any kind of connection you want with the divine. You can worship divine as your brother, your sister, your father, your child, your lover, anything. That is what we saw in last 2 sessions. We also saw the 4 different aspects of how divine can be made comprehensible for our minds. It's not that divine has changed, but it's the limitation of our mind, our intellect, that we cannot grasp divine in the real nature that it exists. So we make some kind of delusions to understand. For example, you can't understand apple, right? When I say apple, you can't understand. What you are listening to is simply a word. What you are imagining is just an image in your head. But none of those, neither that image which pops up into your head, nor the word that goes through your ear into your brain, none of those two are apple. Apple is something separate. Our mind, our intellect cannot grasp the reality as it is. So we make all kind of adjustments. But after that, let us return back to our discussion on yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga. And it has been about 3 weeks that we have not discussed this topic. I will give a brief recap of what we have already discussed so that it also becomes fresh in your mind, and those who have not seen those 2 sessions, they can also come up to speed. So why we are discussing about yoga is the first thing. We are discussing about yoga because we are a group which is primarily focused on meditation. And meditation is the 7th stage of yoga. It is a part of yoga. So, to understand the practice of meditation holistically, what it is all about, what are the preparatory steps, what is the final goal, understand all of it, we have to see it in the systematic format. And what we are discussing is based on this book. This is Patanjali Yoga Pradeep. So you might have heard about Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So our discussion is completely based on this book. Whatever we have discussed, why I have this book now with me today is because I want to give you some idea about what we have discussed, how that discussion is completely rooted in scriptures, and this also will give you an idea of how little we have discussed, how much more is there to be discussed. So we should have that understanding so that we don't get, bulked up thinking that, okay, I know Patanjali Yoga. No, we have just discussed 1%, not even 1% of what Patanjali Yoga Sutra tells. Now, what is Patanjali Yoga Sutra? It's basically a collection of all the information about meditation and yoga in a systematic format. Like I said in our last last session, that a lot of discussions in scriptures are actually scattered because most of the scriptures are in conversational format. Somebody is asking a question, and if the answer contains 5 different points, then the person, based on his attitude, will pick or think one of those aspects is most important, and then they will ask the question about that. And this way, any conversation, even in our day-to-day life, any conversation starts going in any particular direction based on the tendency of the person with whom we are discussing. We generally never delve deep into any discussion unless it is for academic reasons where we have boundaries set for our conversation. So that is how most of the scriptures are. So Patanjali was a rishi, a sage, who is said to have been existed in between 2nd century BCE and 4th century CE. But that does not mean that was the era of birth of yoga or dhyana, meditation, because those ideas and those practices existed even before that. How do we know this? Because the first occurrence of the word meditation or dhyana, meditation is an English word obviously, but the actual word dhyana, the first occurrence we find in Upanishad, which is part of Veda. And some Upanishads are even dated back to last century of the first millennia BCE. That means 1000 BCE, more than 1000 BCE year old. That's when these practices were first found to be mentioned. So Patanjali basically just composed all of this information into one voluminous text, and that finally became the manual for everybody learning yoga and meditation since that time, because that is the most extensive book about meditation, primarily meditation, even more than yoga, because Patanjali understand that the parts of yoga which deals with mind are much more important than parts of yoga that just deals with body. So how do we say that meditation is part of yoga? Is because there is a verse in Yoga Sutra, this book itself, which says that Yam Niyamasan Pranayam Pratyāhāra Dharan Dhyan Samadhayo Ashtangani. That basically means Yam Niyam Asan Pranayam Pratyāhāra Dharan Dhyan and Samadhi. So Dhyan is meditation. So these 8 are the 8 limbs of yoga. These are the 8 limbs of yoga. This is verse number 29 from chapter 2. This is where it says that meditation is 7th part of the yoga. But what is yoga? You may ask then. Okay, we know about meditation. We understood that meditation is part of yoga. But what is yoga? So for that, there is another verse which comes in the first chapter. The second verse of the first chapter says, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which basically means yoga is restraining the formations of the mind. So what does it mean by formations of the mind? Mind does not stay at the same state all the time. Sometimes we get angry, sometimes we get compassionate, sometimes we develop hatred about something, sometimes we develop lust about something. These are all modifications of mind. So freedom from modification of mind is what has been defined as yoga in this book by Patanjali. That is what yoga basically means. And all of this we have already discussed. We are just revising what we have already discussed, and we are also seeing the reference from the book so that we understand that we only read one verse out of first chapter, and then we directly went into the second chapter in our discussion. And second chapter also we started directly from 29, verse number 29. This has been done. I have done this for many reasons, because I also have to explain in the way that people can understand. But now we know that meditation is the 7th stage, and yoga is the freedom from modifications of mind. So there is a word in Sanskrit which is sthit pragya. Sthit pragya means one whose intellect, one whose attitude remains same. That is considered to be the yoga. That is considered the highest stage. Even when you have encountered success in your life, or you have encountered failure in your life, your mental peace remains the same. When you see the gold or when you see the mud, your approach to both of those things remain the same. That is what is meant by freedom from modifications of mind. That is the state of sthita pragya, one whose mind remains at the same state. Not mind, pragya basically means intellect, but for the general understanding we can say mind, because intellect is part of the bigger mind. So then we started discussing about the first stage of yoga, which is yama. So what is yama? So if we see, yama basically is defined in the 30th verse of second chapter, which basically says ahimsa, non-violence, satya, truthfulness, asteya, non-stealing, brahmacharya, moderation of senses, and aparigraha, non-possessiveness. These are the 5 yamas. We have already discussed about this also. These are the 5 yamas, and it has been said in this very next verse, in verse 31 of chapter 2, that these 5 things are to be practiced by everybody, without any exception of where they are situated, without any exception of place, without any exception of time, without any exception of class, without any exception of any situation also. These 5 things have to be practiced by every single person. Now, one important thing is, a lot of time people talk about Dharma. What is Dharma? And how it is different from religion. Religion is basically a set of rules that you have to follow, a way of worshipping the deity, or some philosophy that you have to adhere to. So you can say those 4 paths that we discussed, the path of bhakti, devotion, the path of jnana, knowledge, rational thinking, right? The path of karma, knowing and understanding karma, and doing actions in a way that it does not create any impression. These are all, you can say, religions. These are religions inside of Hinduism. Now, what is Hinduism then? It is Dharma. And this is what Dharma basically means. Following Yama. Not telling a lie, not harming anybody, non-violence, truthfulness, non-stealing, moderation of senses, and the non-possessiveness. This is what is Dharma. And if you see all dharmic religions, other religions also which follow Dharma, you will find parallel to these 5 things everywhere. And that is what is Dharma. So nobody should ever tell anybody to practice a certain religion, a certain path, but the book itself says, and even you can logically think, that these 5 things everybody should follow. Because if you are not truthful, how can there be any integrity? How can people trust you? How can there even exist a society where people can depend on each other, right? It's that simple common understanding. And that is what Dharma is. So that is one thing. Dharma is like dharyate iti dharma. The word Dharma basically means dharyate iti dharma. That which holds is called Dharma. Now, what is this? What does it hold? It holds all the practices that you do for liberation, all the philosophies that you follow to live a good life. All of this is supported by the Dharma, and this is the 5 pillars of Dharma. So even whatever religion, whatever path you may follow, if you deviate from Dharma, then there is no success. So that is about the Yama. And then we also discussed about Niyama. So what are the Niyamas? Niyamas are also 5, which is listed in verse 32 of the chapter 2. What are those? Those are internal and external purity, cleanliness, contentment, sauch, santosh, tap, austerity, and swadhyay, self-study, and Ishwar Pranidhan, devotion to God. Ishwar Pranidhan. This is in verse 232, second chapter, 32 verse. We also discussed about Swadhyay. In Swadhyay, we discussed it in a little bit more detail. Swadhyay can be seen on 3 different levels. Swadhyay or self-study is one when you read the scriptures. What are the scriptures? Basically, knowledge of your ancestors, of our ancestors who have already gone through all the human challenges that we are going through today. What they figured out, how did they live a happy and peaceful life? They tried to pass it on as a duty to the next generation, and that is what is scriptures. In Hinduism, it has a deeper significance, but for the general understanding, this you can understand. So that is one, self-study, studying the scriptures. A lot of things which are completely away from the self, that is not considered part of self-study in Swadhyay. For example, if somebody wrote 1,000 years ago on how to build an aircraft, and it is not you should not be suspicious about how can somebody write about how to build an aircraft 1,000 years ago. Actually, there are texts which are 1,000 years old and they discuss about how to build aircraft. But that is a different topic. But reading that text would not be considered as swadhyaya because it does not deal with our inner workings. It is something external. It has a purpose. It is like engineering. You do it. It can be good for society, but not for individual. So that is not considered swadhyaya. So first is reading something which can tell you more about your own self, help you discover your real nature further. That is swadhyaya. Second stage is looking at the lives of great people, reading biographies, autobiographies of great saints. What they do when we read some scriptures and they make bold, big claims that one should do this, and then we start thinking, how can it even be done? How is it even possible to do in modern society or in whatever context you are living? There have been many, many great people on this planet who has done this, who has shown through their lives how it can be implemented. That is the second part of swadhyaya. Reading about their life helps us understand how we can implement the same principles in our lives also, how we can make those concepts a reality for us as well. And the third part of swadhyaya we also have discussed is meditation itself. When we close our eyes, we move our attention inwards. If we have that kind of concentration which is required to unearth this deep truth, we learn a lot from meditation itself. That is the final level of swadhyaya. That also we have seen. That is Yama and Niyama, the first two stages of Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Patanjali Ashtanga Yoga. And then comes Āsana. We also, one more thing that we should see and is important is the final section of Niyama. Niyama has 5 different things in it, and the final section of Niyama basically is Ishwar Pranidhan, devotion to God. So there is a verse in Patanjali Yoga Sutra itself, verse number 45 of chapter 2, which says Samadhi Siddhir Ishwar Pranidhanat, which basically means Samadhi, the final stage of yoga, can be reached easily through Ishwar Pranidhan, through devotion to God, surrender to God. So that is why we discuss so much about Bhakti Yoga, because even though this book is completely about Raj Yoga, completely about meditation, concentration and all that stuff, right? Still, the author has acknowledged that the fastest way to get there is Ishwar Pranidhan. If you can do that, that will be the fastest way. But if you can't do that, I am going to expand further on the other path, the Raja Yoga path. So that also, one should never think that one path alone is the best. But the author here has said that the fastest to get to the highest stage of yoga, even a stage beyond dhyan, the samadhi, the 8th, dhyan is, or the meditation is the 7th stage. Samadhi is the 8th stage. To get there, the fastest way is Ishwar Pranidhan, surrender to God. So that is about Niyama. Then comes the third, is Āsana. Verse number 46 of chapter 2 says, Sthir Sukha Āsanam. That means, posture is that where you are comfortable and where you are stable. Now here, if you see, he has not said anything about Sirsasana, he has not said anything about Vakrasana or cow pose or Gomukhasana or Garudasana, eagle pose, anything. Just one line in this whole book about Asana. And today, what is happening is, in the name of yoga, people are leaving everything out, just focusing on Asana, which is completely against the thought process of Patanjali Rishi himself, the author of Patanjali Yoga Prati. So what he is trying to say is, your final goal is to attain samadhi, and for samadhi you have to sit in meditation. And to be able to meditate, to focus your mind properly on something, you have to get rid of all kind of distraction. So you should be able to acquire a posture which is comfortable and which is stable, so that your body, the physical body itself, never becomes a distraction in the process of meditation. That is what he is trying to say when he says posture is that which is comfortable and stable. And when we also discussed about posture, that the one of the primary things is to keep our spine and head erect for meditation purposes. But because there are other postures for other purposes, for relaxation you have to keep it horizontal, for meditation you have to keep it vertical. And this is based on many different texts. In Bhagavad Gita itself also, in chapter 6, Bhagavan says that one has to keep his spine and head erect. Bhagavad Gita is considered one of the Upanishads. So as I said in the beginning, that the discussion of meditation and all is even older than Patanjali Yoga Sutra, the Patanjali himself, because it is coming mainly from Vedas and Upanishads. So that is about asana. What happens when you do this, when you can actually sit comfortably for a longer period without any movement, without any impulse from inside of your body to move, when all the impulses to make any movement subside, then the mind starts to identify with the infinite. And this is a difficult thing to understand because you don't know what is infinite. This verse is basically verse 47 of chapter 2, which is saying this. When somebody is properly established in a posture, we call it siddhi. When somebody gets the siddhi to stay in a posture, then what happens? All the impulses that arise to move and change the posture, all of those impulses subside. All the problems that arise due to duality. What is duality? Sometimes you feel cold, sometimes you feel hot, sometimes you may feel pain in your legs, sometimes there is a pleasant sensation. All these are dualities. One becomes free from all dualities, and the mind starts to identify with the infinite. Now this infinite, what is this infinite? There are many things this could mean. And Patanjali just wrote this one line, but this can mean many things. It can mean the cosmic mind. At this point in asana itself, it should not mean Brahman itself. So it can mean cosmic mind. It can mean the space. So as long as we have sense of our body, this body is basically boundary. So as soon as the sense of body vanishes, you start experiencing space, as if what is inside and what is outside is not separated by any means, and the space is infinite. So that's how mind starts to identify with the infinite. That is about asana siddhi, one who is established in a particular posture. If you can find such a posture where your all impulses to move subside, all dualities stop bothering you, and your mind starts identifying with the infinite, that is your posture for meditation. That is your posture for going further on the path of yoga. So in that posture you will start practicing pranayama. Now what is pranayama? Pranayama is basically controlling the process of inhalation and exhalation, and whatever happens in between inhalation and exhalation. What happens in between? Generally nothing happens, but we can make things happen in between that. We can stop our breath outside, we can stop our breath inside. So it can be Bahay Kumbhak or it can be Antar Kumbhak. So inhalation in Sanskrit is called Purak, exhalation is called Rechak, and then Bahay Kumbhak and Antar Kumbhak. So there are different ways. There are hundreds of different pranayams. There are different ways in which you can combine and change the duration, the three things basically, till where your breath goes inside. Does it go up to here? Does it go up to your chest or your navel? Breath never goes to navel technically, but if you breathe deep enough, you can feel your diaphragm expanding and pushing organs which are under the diaphragm outwards. That's why your belly rises, right? So based on that, based on how long can be the exhalation, how long can be the inhalation, whether you want to stop the breath inside, whether you want to stop the breath outside, whether you want to put more pressure while exhalation, whether you want to put more pressure while inhalation, whether you want to inhale from right nostril, left nostril, or from mouth. There are various pranayama techniques which target different parts of our body and mind to create certain effect. Based on what problem you are facing in your yoga journey, you will be prescribed that particular pranayama. Some pranayama can generate a lot of heat in your body. Some pranayama can cool down your body. A lot of, you might have seen videos of people living in extreme conditions and basically surprising every rational person. How is it even possible? So a lot of yogis attribute that to pranayama because they know which pranayama can help raise their body temperature. They can withstand cold and all that stuff. So that is pranayama. And pranayama we discussed was the last thing that we had discussed. Pranayama is also very important in the sense that this is the first stage where we are dealing with something which is as much external as much it is internal. Before that, Yama is the recommendations for social conduct, how we deal with other people, truthfulness, non-stealing, non-violence. Niyama is dealing with our own body, right? Cleanliness, austerity, moderation of senses. Then asana is also external, body related thing. But pranayama is the one thing which is as much external as much it is internal. So breath moves from out and inside and then outside. And from here we shift our attention in Pratyāhāra. It becomes more internal. Then Dhyan and Samadhi becomes completely internal. So we will go into Pratyāhāra, Dhyan and Samadhi in our next session. But I hope this was a good enough recap of what we have already discussed so far and how it all fits together. What we did today was actually trying to practice Pratyāhāra. So Pratyāhāra is, we will discuss more about it, but Pratyāhāra is pulling your senses inwards. Don't let your senses move outward. Through our eyes, nose, skin, most of the time our attention moves outward. And in Pratyāhāra, what we start doing is start pulling our attention inward, right? But at this stage, we have still not given it any object or alamban. So we are just pulling our attention inward. The first part of our session where we closed our eyes, nose, not literally closed, but we placed our finger in here, right? And then we closed our ears and mouth. That bhrāmarī pranayama with ṣanmukhī mudrā is a very effective way to quickly pull all of your attention inward. So that's why we began with that, and then throughout our practice, that's why I asked you not to open your eyes And throughout our practice, we tried to maintain that feeling. You must have had a special experience when you just finished doing that humming, the 5 cycles of humming. And then that experience, how long you can hold, it depends on how long you have been practicing. But we will discuss more in detail about Pratyāhāra in our next session. And the meditation that we did today, you can devise your own similar meditation. The only point that is important here is the bhrāmarī pranayam with ṣanmukhī mudrā is like a kickstart. It pushes you deep into meditation in a very short period of time. So if you want that, you can include that in your practice. But in your practice, what you have to do is you have to keep a non-abiding awareness. You have to keep pulling your senses inward. Any sound distracts you, your attention goes there, let it go. Just don't keep holding on to that observation. Don't keep observing what that sound is. If a thought comes, what happens? We keep extending that thought, adding into that. Don't add anything into it. As soon as you notice that, okay, I am observing this thought, let it go. So you don't have to bring your attention to something because we have not yet given it any object. In the stage of Pratyāhāra, you just free your attention. This is the stage of non-abiding awareness. You free your attention so that you are creating a situation like what they create in sensory deprivation tanks, right? So you want your attention to be completely free of any associations. And then in the next stage, when we will discuss dharana, which is the 6th stage, then we will give our attention one object. And if you have practiced Pratyāhāra properly, if you have developed ability to completely detach your attention from everything external, you will see how easily it accepts the final object that you give for meditation and how it stays there without any effort. But that's why these all steps are there. That's why something is on level stage 4, something is on stage 5, because there is a gradual progression to this whole system of yoga. And that's what we are discussing. Does that make sense? I think that we can wrap our discussion with that today. If anyone has any question, they can ask me. If they want to share anything, any similar thing that they have read somewhere, they know, they want to share with other people, they can do that also. You can raise hand to join me on stage, or you can type it in chat. Okay, so the whole idea of having this book here, this thick fat book here, is that we should have the realization that we know very little. What we have discussed is very little about yoga. So if you really want to dive deep, you can read this book, find some English translation. I think there are a lot of English translations you can find, and go deeper into this. But yeah, what we have discussed is only like 5 or 6 verses, that too mostly from chapter 2, only 1 verse from chapter 1. There are 4 chapters in this book, and each of this chapter has about 70 or so verses. Even when we will complete our discussion on Patanjali Ashtanga Yoga, we will probably be seeing 2 or 3 or mostly 5 more verses, and then we will close our discussion on Patanjali Ashtanga Yoga, because we are not systematically reading this book from cover to cover yet. We are, at least I don't think that a lot of things that this book contains are still experienced by a lot of people, so they can understand the rationale behind why the author has written those things. So yeah, so I'm just sharing what is fundamental for us to progress further in our practice. And if we follow this, then we will slowly able to understand more and more of what is written in this book. Okay, so with that, let's bring this session to a closure. I see other typing. Thank you for wonderful session. Thank you very much for attending. Let's conclude this. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you.